It's so good to see you. I just want to like give you a big old squeeze. Like
Hugs, hugs.
I wore
Virtual.
the shirt for you. Love and
Aw, well, that's awesome. I love the colorways, by the way. It's bright and cheery.
it's bright and cheery. I thought my normal is like navy, black, gray. I was like, that's
Really? I mean, I'm a neutral, so like anything that's neutral, I'm always gonna be a fan of. But you
yeah.
strike me as such a cheery person, so I would just automatically assume that
I
you'd be
cheer it. I'm cheery. I'm deep. You know, it just depends.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Cheery's not a good word. I take that back. You're like it's cheery is just like I feel like overly optimistic without a dose of reality attached to it. You're
right.
not.
Got it. Yeah,
I think you know what I mean.
I appreciate that, man. Oh, I don't know. I don't even know how you spend your day. Like, hi, wait, even wait. Before we get into that, let's
Yeah,
just shake that shit off.
yeah, yeah. Word, shake the whole day off. That's actually the point.
Where do you live? Are you? Where do you live? Brooklyn?
Yeah, I'm in Brooklyn. I'm originally from the Bronx, but
Yeah.
right now, yeah, based out in Bed-Stuy.
Does that mean Mets or Yankees? I have no idea.
That is what that would Bronx would mean Yankees, but I am actually a Mets fan.
Okay.
So yeah, my brother was born in wow, my brother. I mean, my brother was born in like 75, 74. So he was old enough to remember when the Mets won the World Series, and that's what kind of converted him to a Mets fan. So when I was born, I didn't really have a choice. I was
You're
kind of
going
like,
into it.
yeah, exactly. There was no conversation. I didn't have really. There was like it wasn't like an option to buy a plan. It was kind of
Right.
yeah. You Mets fan.
Well, get this. I was born in the city in 1969, May, and my
Mhm.
dad talks about like holding me up in front of the TV, like
Yeah.
watching Tom Seaver pitch. I
I was
guess
gonna say the same thing. 69 Mets. Yeah,
nine,
that's
yeah,
yeah.
right. So I think it's just it's in my blood.
Yeah, yeah. You can. There's no way to get around it. It
Yeah,
is what it is for you right
yeah. So anyway, what like how are you? How was your day?
now. My day was good. It was a productive day. It was a day wrought with questions. There are things in flux right now that are exciting, um, but also asking me to make decisions that I'm trying not to put too much pressure on.
Yeah,
Like from a creative lens, um, like trying not to put too much pressure on myself. But it's been one of those days when I've just been asking a lot of questions of myself. Like, am I ready to do this thing? Should I be doing this thing? What is the next thing?
yeah,
You
totally.
know?
Yeah,
You know?
I wish I had some tarot cards to pull for you, but I don't.
Oh,
You know,
don't
or
worry about it. I feel like that would be awesome.
like
I
a
think.
Ouija board. I want a Ouija board with you.
Oh man, that listen. I don't. You're gonna do that by yourself because
Yeah,
I do not. Ouija board scare me.
I know,
Oh,
I know.
no mas, no mas. How was your day? How was your day today? How were you? How's your heart?
I've been super psyched to talk to you. My day's been really good.
Same,
Uh,
same.
I mean, it's like I gotta say, I love what I do. I love what I get to do every single day. It's like puzzle pieces, putting
Yeah,
together jigsaw pieces.
yeah,
Um, in within a work setting, but
yeah,
also just like in life because we're dealing with humans and we've all got our like glorious messy wonderful
absolutely.
confusing fucking lives, excuse
Yeah,
my
sure.
language.
No,
And so I got my own, but I also get I get the privilege of being inside other people's and their thought
yeah,
process and like helping them either connect the dots or connect to others. And so
yeah.
today's a good day.
I mean, I love that because I feel like it's a conversation I had recently with someone. I don't necessarily think, in general, like generally speaking, we're not acutely aware enough as a people and as a community to really be paying attention to that kind of stuff. Like I think that's so important, and I'm so glad that you are in the position to be doing the work that you're doing. Especially in the space that you're doing it in, right? Because like you were asking me, like what I like my day job is. I'm a senior copywriter at a PR agency. So like, and I have like I've worked in agencies before, and so there's this idea of there's like the incessant need to get work out and to get work done. Like output and outcome are very much a part of it, right? Because of the pace of the business. And I remember hearing this, I forget what Buddhist talk I was listening to, who the practitioner was, but it's like you get to bring your practice with you wherever you go, you know? And so what does it look like? And so for me, when I was working in the nonprofit sector for like about like, like 9 years, like working with brothers and sisters who were coming home from incarceration. And also before that, working with the HIV/AIDS community. And I loved the work, but I was feeling like I wasn't tapping into my creative impulses enough in the 9 to 5 workspace outside of like the performing and all the other things I do outside of there. And me landing in like at a digital agency and then moving to PR, but still being a writer and being creative, for me, it was like, how do I bring the practice and the energy and the spirit of what I do, what I love to do, into these spaces that typically aren't created to provide safety when you kind of speak that language. And so how to envelop that in like every email and every Slack and every brainstorm, like that's been part of the practice for me, you know?
Yeah, I love hearing that because, right, I used to be on that side. I used to be on the floor as a strategist or as like a client service person. And,
Yeah,
and it's a grind. I mean, there's no doubt about the grind of agency life. And when there's,
yeah,
you got to get that out the door because you got to get that out the door because you got to, and like,
yeah,
from those of us that have the creative, look, I think everyone has their own sense of creativity, but
sure.
you go to work to be creative all day.
Yeah,
how do you bring how do you bring yourself with you to work every single day so that you can be like you can bring your heart.
mhm, yeah,
That's literally what it is. Like, I'm
yeah,
not talking like bring your best self, bring your whole, no, just feeling like you have enough safety and you got enough goodness around you. That's
yeah,
like, you bring your heart. We got you, man. We got you. Keep
yeah,
going. And so it's like this holding space thing is so incredibly important in terms of what I do, but I think it's something we need to hold space for ourselves.
yeah, absolutely,
You know,
absolutely. That's
I'm
the
like,
whole,
oh my God, my little baby. I mean, you and I both have kids, and like we do that with our kids, but like
yeah,
it's Claudie,
yeah,
so like gotta take
yeah.
care of
And it's so, and I think what I enjoy about that notion is like, I think it's also it creates a contagion of sorts. I think I'd like to think anyway, where people feel more inclined to then lean into their heart spaces more because they see a person or persons who are doing the same. And even if they're not necessarily looking at the results, they're looking at the energy that that person brings into the spaces. And I think it sparks some level of curiosity about why or how, and it creates, I think, it creates room for that conversation to happen in instances normally when it probably wouldn't be, you know.
You're not even gonna believe what I'm about to show you. Like, all right, you probably can't read my writing, but it says your
Your energy introduces you before you speak. Yeah. Yeah.
energy introduces you before you speak. And the reason I have that written over there on my little bulletin board, but I was thinking about us getting together and I was like, oh yeah, like we fell for each other because of our energy.
Absolutely.
And the energy then was communicated in words.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
the vibe that your words we put out there, on Twitter, which is where, you know,
Right.
I kind of fell in love with you. So uh, and then, so to speak, like what you're saying is the same exact thing at work. Like you bring that in, and by the way, we don't hit it out of the park every day. There's no way.
Right. Right. I love it. Like, what did it was something I shared on my IG that Sharon Salzberg said, like, the goal of meditation isn't to be better at meditation, it's to be better at life. And it's you saying that to me, it made me think of that and brought that to mind because so often we think we the very it's this, for me, what I don't want to say struggle with, but yeah, to a certain extent struggle with is like holding space for both of those, for two things to be true, like the idea that we want to strive to be the best versions of ourselves each and every day while also recognizing that we're going to fall short of that on some days, and creating space for that like level of ambiguity, and then also knowing that people who we care about might be either harmed in the process, may not understand it in the process, and hoping that they too will understand that they're probably doing the same thing on their end. Like what does that look like? I think that's just so it's really interesting to me.
I love that you said that, because I mean we're like spirit animals of each other, and I can just tell. But like, first and foremost, like, they're going through that too. Whoever we're in relationship with, whether or not that's your creative director, or that's
Right.
someone I'm speaking to, or your partner, or whomever, like, when you get that level of like self-awareness, you're like, I'm doing the best I can too. And I'm
Yeah.
gonna fall, and I'm gonna fall many times.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I'm gonna get up that one extra time, which is,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and and so, sometimes when I'm talking to people, or people want to ask me questions, interview me or whatever, which is an enormous honor. One of the questions they always say is like, well, how do you give back to yourself? How do you fill up your cup? And I used to think I had to come up with like the most magnificent answer. Like, I go and I look at my belly button all day on Saturdays. I climb to the tallest peak, and I close my eyes and I don't talk to anyone for 48 hours.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm so not that person, and I can't sit still for that long. And I'm just not. I'm so fundamentally like perfectly imperfect.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it dawned on me. I was like, oh, how do I fill up my cup? I hang with my daughter,
Mm.
I cook, I listen to music, I
Yeah.
try to take some fresh breaths outside. Like, I'm just a person. I might walk through Target.
Yeah.
That,
Yeah.
you know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
we're doing what we can.
Yeah. It's I love you saying that. It makes I think of like when I'm asked when someone's asking me to give advice to a young creative or something like that, or like how do you find inspiration? And what I tend to tell people is, you know, it's okay to treat the things that we consider to be mundane or the everyday as part of our exploration, right? Like I think about what I say is that every single moment is an opportunity to be inspired, and not like in a hypothetical or kind of like overly optimistic pie in the sky sort of way, but where our brains are tracking everything. So like whether it be this conversation, this lovely conversation you and I are having, whether it be me interacting with my daughter, and both of my daughters, but like I might have an idea right then at that moment, but I think every one of those interactions is allowing or creating space for an opportunity for me to then think about that, right? Like, how am I going to, like, the creativity gets to show up in different ways. And I'm being inspired because I'm aware and I'm open to the things and the spaces and the people that I'm engaging with, which
That's
is what we do, you know?
that's it. The creativity gets to come. Your inspiration sparks your creativity, and it comes out in any which way. And it could come out when you're making dinner for your girls.
Mm-hmm.
That could be your creativity. When you're talking to another creative, when you're walking down the street and you're just like, yeah, I love that beat. Yeah, yeah. You're just like inspired.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the thing I love about there's a lot of things I love about life, and I don't mean it in any kind of corny or woo way, because there's,
Yeah. Yeah.
we all have our ups and downs and our stories for sure. But I think when you finally get to that place to understand, like, oh yeah, creativity can come from any place. I don't need the title, dude.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Title's
Yeah.
title. Like, you were
Yeah.
still, let me just take a bet here that you were still just as creative and a great copywriter when you were working at HIV/AIDS Foundation. And let me just like go
I
out
mean,
on a limb there.
maybe, I mean, yeah. I mean, probably, I wasn't, I mean, the interesting thing is when I was writing copy, I didn't start writing copy realistically until, can you hear that in the
I
background?
love it. I love it.
Can you,
I love, what are they doing?
she's just tickling her, which, you know, but she's
That's the
awesome.
best.
writing, when I was writing, when I was working in the nonprofit sector, I was just writing from more of like more or less a case management role. But I
Yeah.
think part of that was preparing me for whatever else was going to happen. Because I was still doing, I was performing my spoken word poetry. I was rapping a lot more at that time. Like I was recording music, like actively.
Because you were
Um,
the same guy, like I'm saying, sorry to cut you off.
yeah, no,
It
no, right.
wasn't
Yeah,
coming out in the newsletters. It was coming out.
yeah, right,
It was
right.
coming out. And
Yeah,
now,
yeah,
now you actually have, not that it matters, but you have a title that's like, you are a creative.
yeah, yeah. And
And
I mean, but I mean, to your point, as much as I like try to spew like labels and roles and titles, I also compared. I use the comparison of like a Barnes and Noble or Strand a lot. Like I love poetry and I love reading fiction. If I want to go find a poetry and fiction book, I know where to find it because there's a thing that says this is the poetry section, this is the fiction section. If that section didn't exist, it would be very difficult for me to find what I was looking for. But I think what we could do a better job of is recognizing the labels and not be making ourselves beholden to them. Like I'm a my title is senior copywriter, but that doesn't encapsulate all that I do at my 9 to 5, and it definitely, and I know you relate to this very well. It doesn't encapsulate what I do and who I am as a human being.
right.
For some people, it's easier to like have that because then they can use it in a conversation. I've had people tell me that they didn't know when I was dating. I had someone tell me specifically, I don't know what to tell my mom you do. This is before I had the title because she's like, you do all these different things. And I'm like, okay, I've never had that problem before.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly though. I was just thinking that, like, what what do you could go tell your mom, or your mom's probably, very literate in this, but you can go tell the person down the street, like, I'm a copywriter, and they really, I'm a copywriter at a PR firm. They actually might not know what that means, but they know who you are.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, and to be fair, if I took, my mom still doesn't know what I do. Like,
Right,
my,
right.
my mom is like, she was born in the West Indies, a Caribbean woman, came to the States when in her 20s. Like, my mom kind of gets the idea of what I do in general. But yeah, absolutely to your point. Like, it's also that's been interesting for me because there are people, and I'm sure you could probably relate to this as well. There are people who know me for very different things in very different spaces. There are people who knew me just as a rapper, or as an actor. And then there are others who are like, and that's a very small group, just so we're clear. And then there are those who know me, who think of me as the affirmation guy or the person who's like on IG and Twitter. And then there are those who are now just getting accustomed to me being that person because they've known me as a creative
Yeah,
person who writes, a person who's an actual copywriter, you know. But the ability to be able to do that, I think, speaks to our multifacetedness of humans. Right? We're all multi hyphenates, I think. You know?
we're, did you just say we're all multi hyphens?
Yeah, no, yeah, yeah. Because we are like every single one of us has a thing, that we do. Like your mom, like
Yeah,
your chief heart officer, right? You may be a sibling. You may be
exactly. I like
there.
that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I love that book. You actually said you actually said multiple hyphens.
yeah. Like
That's-
multi. Is there like a book? Is there like a book for that? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because like generally, like people would consider me a multi hyphenate because I do so many, like, I do creative stuff. I also do some strategy stuff I do brand consulting stuff. So, like, when I show up in creative circles, I'm considered like a multi hyphenate or a person who has multiple hyphens attached to whatever they're doing. But I think we all are. Like to your point, we all have this level of creativity alongside the other roles and responsibilities we have as humans,
I just like, if you see my smile, I've never heard that. And it's the best thing I've heard in a long time.
That's awesome. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I had never heard multi hyphen or multi hyphenate is what I tend what people might consider me as until I started working in this industry. And I mean, literally like maybe 2 years ago, because it started becoming more of a thing when it started becoming more of a thing, I think, because of the hustle and gig economy.
Yep.
We had a person who's like, I'm a designer, but I'm also a copywriter. I'm also I don't know, a photographer.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, you do a whole bunch of shit.
Right,
Like,
right. I love that. I literally wrote it down. It's so crystal clear to me, and it's so true.
yeah, right.
Or
Yeah.
like, well, now this is gonna, I mean, left field, but I love the baseball analogies, though. By the way, um, but it's like, you know how people when they get married, sometimes they hyphenate their name because they
Yeah.
don't let go of like who
Mm.
they are, but
Yeah,
they
like,
want
yeah,
to acknowledge, their partner.
yeah,
Kind of same thing of like a union, a joining of, but like my identity is multi-hyphenated.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's you've just given me so much there. So thank you. I mean, literally we could stop right now,
but,
but
but this wouldn't have happened if weren't having this conversation, because I've always, when I think of multi-hyphenates and multi-hyphen beings, I generally think of creative spaces, but I never really, until we started talking, thinking about how we're all actually multi-hyphenate, because we all do more than one thing
yeah,
as humans, and so I say that also too, saying this out loud, I think about how at one point in time people used to wag their finger at folks who didn't have one career lane or one specific way in for them. Like I used to, when I was in acting class in acting school, my one of my great teachers, Mr. Lucene, used to be like, don't have a plan B. Like acting is your only thing, your plan A, because if you have a plan B, you're creating room for failure. And I didn't have the language for it then, but I recognized very clearly I had plans B, C, D, and E, and they were all operating in the same space
right,
because I was built to do more than one thing.
right,
Like I'm really good at more than one thing. So why would I not do that?
right. I
Yeah,
love that. And that is a different way of thinking. And I respect your teacher because he
absolutely.
probably was like, he had to have that one job, punch in, punch out, because that's how he was
Absolutely.
paid
Yeah,
weekly. But that's so true. Like you knew it back then. And I think the awareness now, but like imagine then everyone you touch at work, but like your kids are gonna grow up with that possibility
yeah,
to do anything and everything that they want to.
yeah, yeah. And that's so important because we, not for nothing, even just financially speaking, we're in times now where you almost kind of have to,
Yeah.
unfortunately, but and I would never ask my daughters to have multiple streams of income coming in, like, and that's a whole nother layer of conversation about being black in America and why that maybe feels like a necessity. But part of it for me is like, it's exactly what you said. It's wanting them to feel like they can do any and everything that they want to do without feeling like, oh, if I decide I major in architecture, then that means I have to then be an architect when I graduate. No, I mean it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the degree and you spend money on it, but it's about the journey, and I think we sometimes get caught up in, again, the outcome as opposed to, like, we get caught up in the destination as opposed to, like,
Journey. Yeah.
yeah,
It, it's a phenomenal bumper sticker.
you know,
It's a
you know,
journey. Yes.
write
Yeah.
a song, life is a highway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. I wanted to ask you, all right, here's a very serious question. So I've been on the hunt
Serious?
for
Believe
what's
you.
that?
Is this gonna be serious? I don't believe
This is
you.
a serious question. No, it actually is a serious question. I want your point of view on this because I trust you. So I've been looking for a chief diversity officer at work now for a long time, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Getting super close. I probably met around 40 people like
Ooh,
this, right?
awesome.
And in the beginning, it didn't, I just knew we needed it. I wrote a job description. I don't know what I don't know. I certainly know quite a bit, but there's a lot I don't know. I can respond to, but I can't provide,
Mm, yeah.
it's not about me. Getting real close. Like I think we're on third and a half base.
Oh wow, that's super cool.
Amazing. Super close. What do you think are the most top of mind things? I don't want to say the most important because everything's important when you talk about diversity, inclusivity, and equity. Everything's important when we talk about racism and anti-racism. And fuck, if I could solve it, man, I would go to sleep even happier than I do because I
Yeah,
can't. And I know I speak for you too.
yeah.
What do you think are some things as a person enters into an agency? you know, where the demographic is obviously it's New York, London, LA. I mean, it's the demographic,
Yeah.
but America
Mhm.
focused. What do you think? Like I said, it's a serious question, but I'd love to know your thoughts on what should I be looking at? What should we be looking at? And you could tell me the most obvious thing, which is Claude, like fucking belonging. Excuse my language, or like
I mean,
numbers.
curse as much as you want. I love cursing. Um, what I what I'm defining this as, well, what comes to my head is like, this is a long, maybe it's not long term, but like understanding cultural nuance. And so it's a conversation I was having with one of my black colleagues who's also a good friend of mine. And, you know, I was born in New York. She was born in Texas. That black experience alone statewide is different. And so, which makes it, I mean, to be fair, and it can make it difficult for folks who are not black to understand the complexities and the nuances of the community. And that's just for black, like for the black community. We're not talking about Asian versus South Asian, you know, like, and then even what I what I love and really what I'm really talking about, I guess, is intersectionality.
Yeah.
You know, like like people we've when Kimberly Crenshaw broke it down the way that she did, what we're really looking at is how all of the things that all the labels that have been affixed upon us are actually important to a certain extent. Like I am a cis hetero black man who grew up in the 80s, right? Which is different than growing up in 2000. Like there's just so much that's gonna there's so much there's so many things that intersect that are going to affect how I show up in my day to day.
Yeah.
You know, it's going to affect how I talk to people. It's going to the things that I've seen based on where I grew up, like based on race, ethnicity, you know, gender, right? Like all these things affect each other. And so I think some of that is recognizing and understanding the cultural nuance and intersectionality of people. But I think this is stuff that you already know. You know, like, are you compassionate? Are you, you know, are you kind? Do you communicate? And really, I mean, when I say that, I mean, like, can you listen? Are you listening?
Yeah.
You
Amen.
know, because I feel like there are so many, especially for like a Vayner, you know, where there's so many different perspectives. So to your point, like we're talking different countries. Like the way a person greets you in Japan is different than the way a person greets you from the Bronx. And understanding, and I learned that, I remember not specifically that scenario, but I remember working in social services and we would have to have cultural trainings, you know, because we were going to have clients who had come from India, or clients who had come from different continents and countries, that the way they say yes or no, like how they position their bodies is very telling for, it is different. Like the way we read people is different, and having to be understanding to that and not being presumptuous or make decisions or judgments about people without recognizing the cultural nuance of those situations and those people, you know?
I mean, that's so incredibly like insightful and helpful. And like I was thinking, yes, intersectionality, but like when you broke it down, you said something that like, yeah, of course, but I didn't even think about it. Like you're a child of the 80s, which is very different than the early millennial population in,
Right.
in 1,000 ways, and probably 1,000 more ways.
Mhm.
And that right there. And then you take born and bred in New York, Texas, France, South Central,
Right.
a whole nother,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a whole nother. So, and I'm really just literally referring to like our black and brown communities. But then of course, when you widen it out, which is, you know, what we obviously want to look at diversity in a holistic way,
Yeah.
but for sure, I really want to be able to, you know, get someone in the door who feels as though listening is the numero uno thing. That's,
Yeah.
and of course I would look for that person, because knowing that that's so essential, people
Yeah.
need to be heard, and they need to feel like, not only people need to be heard, of course, they need to feel like their voice matters.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And like you're tapped in. So like I like you I again like I trust your heart and your judgment in that regard. And I think some of that too is just gonna be like we had prime example. We have one of our VPs of strategy. She's from London, Black woman, Jamaican, from London who came stateside. And so even just culturally, like the things that she know, like the things that she was watching
Yeah.
different than the things that I was watching growing up, you know? And there's just a way that we interact. Like there's certain things that she hasn't had to deal with as a Black woman, you know,
Sure.
that maybe a Black woman stateside has, you know, like it's, so it can be very easy if you're not a Black or brown person to like try to correlate all these Black experiences when it's kind of, it's incredibly difficult to do so, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think it almost, not to compare it, but to kind of like, you know, do it like a dot, dot, dot to what we were talking about in the beginning, which is so many different, like, you are more than just a copywriter. You are more than just, and you are more than just a Black man. You are more than just like you broke it down, the intersectionality. And I think it's so needed. It's so needed to be known. You
Yeah.
know, I remember the day I learned the phrase code switching,
Mm, yeah.
which was like an eye-opening moment to me as a real naive person. Like didn't really grasp because I don't, because my skin color is white, I don't have to think about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, you know, I'm gay, so I have to think about certain areas in the world which I might not want to be, you
Yeah.
know, holding hands.
Yeah.
Uh, but that's very different than having white skin.
And I mean, and you know, and to be fair, you know, like every community has some kind of privilege, right? And I think what's become most important for me is for everyone, Black, white, brown, red, whatever, to like recognize privilege, right? Like I have able-bodied privilege. There are things that I physically can do that a person with a disability or disabilities,
Yeah,
seen or unseen, cannot,
yeah,
right? Or can do more comfortably than somebody else. But I also think part of that is being able to, and this is when I think the compassion comes in, and it's something I learned from Sharon Salzberg, the idea, because like empathy was a very big word for me, and it still is. But after like reading her book and kind of having more conversations, what I realized is like empathy really lays the foundation for compassion. Compassion is the action, like empathy is the feeling, and then compassion is that empathy being put into action,
love it.
you know, and a person being able to not just I feel what you feel, but I feel what you feel, and I'm creating space to do something about it, you know, by lending a helping hand or using my voice as an ally or as an accomplice, depending on how whichever word you're choosing.
Right.
You know, like it
It's massive.
level of distinction, it becomes paramount, especially when we're talking about the plight of the black person in America. You
Yeah.
know.
I think I love that you broke it down like that because when we think about empathy as the emotion, I often translate that as I'm a passenger alongside you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
It's
I love that actually.
very difficult for me to actually say, Joel, I've stood in your shoes.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't. There's no way. Maybe two things in your life might be similar than two things in my life, but we're fundamentally different people for a variety of reasons. So to say that I'm empathetic, I get that you're going through something, and I want to walk next to you, and I want to give you my heart. I want to give you my compassion, and I love that there, there's a distinction there, and that's super important.
Yeah, and literally until I read and like forget the language Sharon Salzberg used, and it was actually her describing a conversation she'd had with a Buddhist practitioner about compassion,
Yeah,
and that for me was like it shifted a gear in me a little. Like okay, like I consider myself to be an empath and empathetic person, um, but hearing that made me say, okay, what is the next step to that thing,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and what does that look like?
Ma'am, I you see me jotting things down. Besides multi hyphens, I've jotted some. Thank you for that. I really like. I appreciate. I'll be knocking on your door many times. I'm sure.
The,
Just
I'm here, doors open.
check stuff, and I just love it. What can I do to like? How can I be of service to you? How can I bring you anything and anything and anything?
I mean, Claude, I mean, I feel like you support you support what I do, and I think to me that's the most important. I people like some maybe it's my Capricorn nature to like not necessarily like I don't it's not that I don't ask for help. It's just that I really do have the things that I want and need, like and it does sometimes it feels like hokey, but more love is never, I'm never gonna turn that down.
Yeah.
So like when people come to me as a resource or come to me for a conversation, for me that's an extension of love. Like I see you as a valuable voice in the community, and I want to share, spend time, and I have it to give. So for me, like every retweet counts, every time there's a conversation, my name is mentioned, that counts. To me, that's the work that I'm trying to do. And I'm glad we're having this conversation because I told myself in 2021 I was going to be, which I have been doing a really good job of, it's like kind of steering clear from conversations surrounding, not steer clear, because that's a little strong, but doing way less of these conversations surrounding mental health and wellness and all that, because it felt like I was getting away from the storytelling work that I tend to do and I've been doing for my entire life. Like I've been rapping since I was like 5, you know. Um, and this year's kind of seen more like me leading writing workshops and opportunities for that, and me performing more because that's what I really want to be doing more of.
Yeah.
But what I'm realizing too is like I can't. The other stuff is just as important. Like having conversations about wellness and about mental health and about compassion with people who get it, and like who fill the cup is just as important.
I hear you, and I love that. And I mean, I'll always be filling your cup up. So that's just a given. It's a given. And I'm gonna let you go because you got things to do and you got some kids over there, and so do I. But you wrote something recently that I just thought I would say everything that you write is profound. Like, and I really mean that, man. I don't need to blow sunshine anywhere. Uh, you said, and I should pull it up, but I'm the man I always wanted to be.
Yeah, I literally I am what I really wanted to say is like I am already who I thought I wanted to be when I was growing up.
Yeah.
I said was like I am who I wanted to be when
I am I am who I wanted to be when I grew up.
Yeah, because I think part of it for me was sometimes I speak from the personal I because I want people to be able to receive it as a mantra for themselves,
Yes.
right? Because I mean, and for me, it was, I almost didn't tweet it because I didn't want it to come across as like me bragging, but it was more about looking at where I am now and who I wanted to be and being like, oh, I'm not perfect. Like you said, I'm perfectly flawed, right? But for me, it's I can look at what I'm doing. Like when people ask you that question of, if you had all the money in the world, what would you do? And I'm like, I would just be doing exactly what I'm doing now. I would just be doing it for a broader audience, honestly. Like I would just be doing, the work that I'm doing as a performer, as a writer in a bigger way. Like part of the reason why I tried to grow the Instagram platform is because I wanted to have more, I wanted more attention and more attention, not from the ego way, but recognizing that I have a voice and I think I have something to say that matters that can help and benefit people. So how do I continue to expand on that notion in bigger ways? And for me, I can look at I gave giving the TED talk for me was the thing. There's like a couple of things I have on my bucket list. The TED talk was one of them. And when I got to do that, I was like, oh, this is I've been wanting to get that. Someone reminded me, I had a conversation with them at some event, random event in like Newark, New Jersey. And a good friend of mine, Cindy, and I forget, she mentioned like I was talking about the things I was doing. And like, you know, I casually mentioned I wanted to give a TED talk, and that was in 2014. You know, like I am all the things that I told my mother I was going to be, you know.
Yeah.
I would, you know, I would like to make a little more money, but you know, that's literally other than that, and that's, you know, so I can put that back into my family, my community.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
that's gonna come. And that
you know.
yeah, I have no doubt that's anything that you do because it's coming from your heart.
Yeah, thank you.
Place, man.
Thank
Yeah,
you. It's a team. It's a team effort. You know, like
of course.
you pour into me, I pour into you, you pour into the world and the community. And I think we all kind of get to dip our hands and our toes into that, you know, whether we acknowledge it or not. I think the more we acknowledge it, the better we all are. But like the more we keep feeding that love, that love, man, it transcends everything else, you know?
I think that's a mic drop moment right there. All right. We're gonna put this out. You want people to hit you up on Twitter and Instagram.
Yeah, sure. You know, like you can find me. It's a little more complicated because someone tried to hack into my account, but I am I am Joel Leon on Instagram, and then Joel aka M as in Mary AG on Twitter, because MAG used to be my rap name.
Love it.
Right. So I mean, but if you go to the Instagram, you'll be able to find all that stuff.
We'll put it up.
Yeah.
You're coming back and we're gonna do some, I mean, rapping is next. Like you gotta lay down some tracks for me.
If it feels
Good strikes you, but you can't just dance.
there, I mean, and you know, especially in, you know, when the city and the world opens up, you know, we can do this.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
You know, fingers crossed, sooner rather than later. But
listen,
yeah.
I love
yeah.
I love you. Thank you. Thank you for your time. You know.
Thank you for reaching out in the first place, you know, and wanting to share space and hold space with me. It's important. So I appreciate you for it.
I'll catch you soon.
Yes, ma'am.
Bye, sweetheart.